looking at the question of evil today. And this comes from our friend Jane in Belize, down there in South America. A little warmer, I think, there than it is here, even, from what she says, a little more humid. And Jane says she might be visiting us in early October, so that'll be kind of fun. I don't always meet people in our YouTube congregation, so that'll be fun. So she was reading the book Lessons in Truth by Emilie Cady and ran across that line, "There is no evil," and got her attention because her question was kind of what's in the news today about human trafficking and all of the 10,000 other things that are going on in the world, that how could anybody in their right mind say there is no evil? And so I think I did a pretty good job explaining to her what Katie was talking about, why she said what she said, and from the perspective that she said it from. Very important, because I don't think she was any more naive. There was one case where Emilie Cady was suing people because they deported her father illegally, and she was trying to get him back, and did eventually, but she was well aware of the sometimes cold-hearted side of humanity, and did address that. And to me, that kind of information is good to have, to show that she was a practical thinker, and that what things she said, she did not say lightly. But she did say there is no evil. And if you take that statement as, totally out of context, without an explanation, it sounds like she's a nut job. But she's not. She was a very down-to-earth, spiritually minded person. So over the years, many have asked me why I thought she would make such a statement. You can't watch the news for 10 minutes without seeing there is no shortage of evil. How could this woman of such profound insight be so naive about what's going on around us? Actually, when I read that so many years ago, it made perfect sense to me what she was saying, because I read the context of it. So I never stumbled on what she was saying, but I have talked to many people since that have. She wasn't naive. She was approaching the problem of evil from the absolute point of view. Like most of us, Katie was exposed to the mainstream Christian belief in two powers, good and evil, God and Satan. For me, it often sounded like Satan was just as powerful as God. You kind of got that impression from the ministers. Sometimes they would just rail on and on about evil, and how Satan's out there just kind of waiting around every corner to snag you, to win your soul. And it would seem, I guess that's what brings converts in. When you put the fear of eternal damnation in somebody's mind strong enough, they're going to show up in church and they're going to support you, financially probably. It's a good fundraiser. Satan is a great fundraiser, actually. But I am depicting him as a cartoon because that's how I see him. I have no feeling whatsoever that there's this being that with horns and a pitchfork and a forked tail or whatever that is. But if you look up Satan and do a Google search on Satan and images, you get some nasty stuff. You get some frightening stuff. And some sermons I remember hearing long ago, those are the kinds of pictures they would paint. Very nasty pictures. I remember showing up at a tent revival. We used to have revivals every year. They'd bring a minister in, but there was one tent revival. This minister, his veins looked like bicycle inner tubes. They were just bulging out. His face was red. He was screaming. He was pounding the pulpit, and just and everybody's wide-eyed, listening, wondering if they're going to be subject to that. But it's unfortunate that such a beautiful set of ideas that we find within Christianity have to be delivered in such a toxic system of this belief in evil. You've got to believe in evil and the power of sin and Satan and all of that. There's so much good in it that I'm not sure. Well, I know how that happened. I think I know how that happened. I think I know why it happened. Because as I said, Satan's is a great fundraiser, and will fill up the church. And I would imagine just about every church in America this morning, every Christian church is hearing, Satan will be brought up sometime, somewhere. And just that reminder, a lot of them don't focus on that, but I would say the bulk of them probably do. Just the fundamental Christianity. We had a couple of witnesses show up at the door. I don't want to badmouth them too bad, but that's a big thing for them. And it just, if you take that away, if you turn Satan into a cartoon, the system doesn't work. So we want to turn it into a cartoon because it's not real. We can actually trace the beginning, the origins of Satan, the origins of the picture that we have today. You can trace it back, and where we find it coming from is the mind of people. And that is, it's sort of like, well, I'm not going to go into that, but it's selling fear is what it is. And think of any industry you want that sells fear, and it's kind of the same thing. It's just a different set of tools. But if you can sell fear, if you can get somebody afraid enough, they will buy whatever you're purchasing, whatever you're selling, they'll purchase it. There's a strong negative drag on anyone who believes there is an evil force working against their every effort to live a good life. Cady was offering a way out of this trap. By saying there is no evil, she's saying that a power of evil does not exist as a first cause. So what's that mean? When we think of a first cause, you saw the news about the earthquake in Russia this week. That was the first cause. What was the second cause? What was the effect of that? Tsunami warning. And then a couple of volcanoes erupted. So those are the effects. But the first cause, we would say, is the earthquake. So if you think of evil as an effect rather than a cause, it's not a first cause. It's not a reality. We say there's one presence, one power, not two. But I grew up in a religion that taught there's two powers, not one. There's two. And they're pretty close to equal. So to shift over to this idea there's not two powers, then you have to explain, well, where does all this evil human stuff come from? And it comes again from the mind of the individual, the mind of human beings. It's an invention of people. For a helpful analogy, we can turn to the law of mathematics. In mathematics, there is no law that forces error. Error is not a power, but a result of our miscalculation. Because there is no power that is seeking to trip us up with wrong answers, we can erase the chalkboard and correct a mistake. So you're doing your math on the chalkboard and you say 2 and 2 is 5. I'm not going to get into this kind of math that I see there because it's that is evil as far as I'm concerned. I don't want anything to do with that. So we go 2 and 2 is 5. Well, that's an error. But did the law of mathematics cause me to come up with that error? There's no power in that law that would cause that to happen. But it can happen, and it does happen. Is it true that human beings can come up with wrong mathematical answers to their equations? Happens all the time, especially with people like me. thank goodness for the computer and the calculator and the things, adding machines that we have, and all the tools that help us from doing that. But the point is, there's only one power working through the law of mathematics, and that is the law itself. There's not something that's waiting for you to just write down the wrong number, that's causing you to do that. But you could do it. You might do it. But then you're not punished by the law of mathematics. You're punished by your own miscalculation. See, it's not really a punishment at all. It's just you come up with the wrong answer, you start over, you erase it. And that's what Cady is saying. There's no evil as a power. The moment you come up with a miscalculation, you can erase it by saying there's only one presence, one power, operating in my life, in the universe, in every place. The universe pretty much covers it all, but there's only one presence and one power. So we're going back to the chalkboard with our eraser. We've got something going on in our life, like Fred's situation. Is that an evil power? Did Gretchen do something wrong to deserve something like this? Some people might think that. There are belief systems that would equate those two things. In Jesus' day, they thought sin was the source of ill health. That was, when the man was brought to Jesus that was born blind, who sinned? This man or his parents? It's like that was the belief system, and it still goes on today. It's like you were saying about the field, that the hailstorm in the field, the minister comes out and prays for everybody's field, but the hail still destroys one of them. Well, what did you do wrong, to bring that about? That's what Ben Franklin, I shared that story a couple of weeks ago, that the fire brigade would not go to the house that was struck by lightning, but would go to the others around it to keep them from catching on fire, because the one that was hit probably deserved it. They did something to bring it on. That was their thinking, and I found that, well, at first I thought, gosh, and then I thought, well, that's kind of par for the course. We sort of think that, when bad things go wrong. Look at the whole Job story. That is kind of created to illustrate why do the righteous suffer? And Job's friends come in and they tell him all the things he's done wrong and all the reasons that everything he has been taken away. And it's like, you deserve that because there's this force that's working. But so when something's going on in our life, we stop interpreting it in that way. We stop seeing that as a possibility. And we say, okay, it looks this way, but there's only one presence, one power working. So it must be working through this situation in a way that makes sense. I have no doubt that Gretchen will come out better, as a result of this, that, it's good they found it probably, and good that they're taking these measures. But it's, if we get this idea, and probably most of us have, I'm probably preaching to the wrong audience here, but we still, when our house was struck by lightning in Evergreen, we had a big ponderosa pine growing up through the deck. I've told you this story before, and the lightning comes down and goes straight through the house, blows a hole in the side of it. And I have to admit that I had to take a thought inventory to see if, I wonder what I did to bring this on. Just a flash. I love a good thunderstorm, but I don't really like that kind, where it gets that close. But would that be an attack from God from something I did? The fundamentalist Christian might say so, because I'm a cult leader, that you're just getting what you deserve. But Jesus said that the rain falls on the just and the unjust, sun shines on both, and lightning hits both. Lightning hit a minister's house. Can you believe that? So I don't think there's anything personal. Because after that happened, I walked around our yard. We had about maybe a half dozen ponderosa pines, these huge things growing up all around us. Every single one of them had had a zipper around it where lightning had hit it, before it got the last one, which was the one coming up through our deck. That thing, you couldn't get your arms around. It was huge. And I'm surprised that we hadn't had a strike before that. While we were there, I think we saw 2 or 3 houses burned to the ground. You'd get a lightning storm every afternoon at 4 o'clock. You could almost set your watch to it. So is God thinking, I don't want these people living on my mountain? It's like, well, you can think of it that way, but I did not take it that way. There's one presence and one power. Lightning strikes, when you get in the way, it's not a good thing, but it's not an evil thing either, or it's not the result of your evil-minded thinking. It's just that you got in the way. The volcano goes off, you're in the path of the lava. Are you being punished for something you did, or are you just being punished because you shouldn't have been there? You should have been somewhere else. It just depends on how you look at it. But if you think that there is something working against you all the time, Cady's giving you a way out. Say, there is no power working against me right now. There's no evil. There's no evil that's a reality in terms of a first cause. There's only one first cause, and that's God. And that's what the ancient Hebrew understood. And if you read the opening chapter of Genesis, you'll see that that's what they said. In the beginning, God. There's no Satan that's been built into that creation story. There's no evil force. That comes along later, but who caused that? God said, eat everything but that. And they go straight for that. So that's kind of the human side of it. What we call evil at the human level has its origin in human consciousness. People are capable of heinous acts, but none can say the devil made me do it. Some of them do, though. There's always an underlying psychological imbalance involved. And that's kind of one of the issues we are hearing in the gun control dialogue that goes on, is that guns are dangerous. And they are, if a human points them in the wrong direction. But I have several, and I've never had one get up and go shoot somebody. It just doesn't do it. But we have this thing, we can demonize just about anything we want. And I'm not interested in demonizing guns or anything else, because everything has a place. Fire, we see, it can be very destructive, but it can also be very comforting. The discovery of fire changed the world, changed a lot of things. So it just depends on how you're going to look at it. You can demonize just about anything and, make something of a political issue out of it, and we're not going to do that here. Unity's foundation statement affirms there's only one presence and one power in the universe, God the good, omnipotent. That's kind of the abbreviated version of the original. When we make this statement, we're essentially stepping up to our chalkboard, erasing our miscalculations, and starting over. So if you think, again, something's going on in your life, why, what caused it, whatever, you can even take yourself out of that picture. Because in unity, you can put as much guilt on yourself as you can on the devil or anybody else. Like my negative thinking brought this on. We can back ourselves into that corner. And it took me quite a while to figure that out. That the sin and punishment system has just been transferred into a different language. It's called negative thinking, and it has ramifications, and it does. There's no question. If you meet a person they're always down, always looking at the ground, never affirming the good or never expecting greater good to unfold, their life probably is like the cartoon character with the cloud over their head. No matter where they go, they're going to have bad luck. What's that song in Hee Haw? If it weren't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. I've actually known people that had that attitude, and it was like, I just thank God haven't been hit by lightning yet. But it could happen any day, anytime. But it's like I can't remember how Emerson put that, but he had a very good way of thinking that you're the permitted being. You're living by permission, or just because God's in a good mood today, that you're going to make it through. So we need to get rid of all of that. That's the evil. That is but it's a secondary cause. It's our own thinking. It's the thinking of humankind. And that belief in evil is very strong today. The belief in Satan is very strong. But it doesn't mean you have to buy into it, and of course you don't, because you probably gave that up long ago. But we want to answer the question, because we don't want to stick our heads in the sand and say, this stuff is not going on. Just the last couple of weeks, there's been several court cases, heinous murders, just child abductions, all kinds of stuff that we can't even comprehend, as normal thinkers. So is there a being behind all of this that's so nasty and wanting to thwart our good that is causing people to do this? No, it's not. It's you can write it off as that, but if you do, there's nothing you'll do about it. If you think there's a power, a real power called evil, there's nothing you can do about it. 2 and 2 is 5. I can't change it. Just the way it is. I didn't mean to do it, but that's what showed up, and I have no power to do anything about it. Well, you have an eraser. And so the eraser is denial, or the releasing of that energy that we're giving that appearance. And if you look at it in that way, kind of more of in a mathematical way, that I made an error, so I'm going to erase it and fix it. I can do that. And knowing that in mathematics that the proper way to get to the right answer is there. It's always there. My mistake does not take it away, does not change it. And I can say 2 and 2 is 5. I can write that on the chalkboard 50 times. And the law of mathematics is not going to say, well, I guess you're not going to get it, so I'm going to punish you. It doesn't think that. It doesn't think at all. It's just a law. And that's what Cady stressed throughout her book is think of God as law. Not as an old man in the sky, but think of God as law. As our consciousness sets up a vibration, we tend to see that vibration. We tend to see the equivalent of that vibration wherever we are. If that vibration includes the possibility of evil as a reality, we'll see it. And we'll be able to say, see, there it is. And you get other people that believe that, and maybe most of the people in the world believe that. I don't know how many do, but a lot do. It's a big, strong idea. But we don't have to. Regardless of what has transpired, we envision the best and highest outcome for ourselves and all involved. We release all feeling that some negative power is working against us, against our highest good. We affirm that one presence and one power is at work, smoothing out the rough places, bringing light where there seemed to be darkness, and bringing peace where there once was chaos. So if we hold this idea, no matter what's going on in your life, you may have some things going on you don't particularly want, but try to erase all concepts that some power outside of you is giving you a hard time, and say there's one presence, one power, because it may be that apparent negative condition is exactly the right thing to have happen so you can get to that next phase. I don't know how that always works, but I do know that if you hold that idea that the greater good will eventually show itself in ways that maybe you couldn't see before. When you get knocked off your feet, the main question on your mind is always why. Why did that happen? And what did I do to bring it about? We tend to go there. So, okay, do that if you want to, but then go past that. The one presence, one power idea. There's no evil. that is working in my life right now. Does that make sense? Okay. Thanks for coming. Thank you for watching this week's program. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with others. We want to reach as many people as we can, and we appreciate your help. We have many subjects in our video lineup, so feel free to take a look. If there's a topic you don't see and would like me to address, just put it in the comment section. I'd love to know what's on your mind. Thanks again for your interest in Independent Unity, and have a wonderful week.